So, so, hello everyone. I don't know how many people are watching, but it doesn't look like any, but I'm going to chat anyway. So I just watched, I got one viewer. Okay, that's good. Hello, sir, or ma'am, whoever you are. So, I just watched Game 7 between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens. Now, I'm an Oilers fan, and my team was eliminated in 4 games at the hands of the Winnipeg Jets. Now, I am willing to call the Leafs Jets series a lot closer than a lot of people give it credit for. Because usually when you look at a sweep in the playoffs, you go, oh, the team that swept was really good, or the team that got swept was crap. That's not exactly what happened with these two. It was really a series, outside of one game, it was really a series where one goal kind of decided the whole thing. And unfortunately, it wasn't that Edmonton that got that goal. That's not what happened with Toronto and Montreal. Toronto failed big time because they simply couldn't get past Montreal's defensive style, and they couldn't get past the human brick wall, simply known as Carey Price. But I mean, it's just, you look at how Toronto played versus how Montreal played. And a lot of this has to do with how Toronto played. I'm not saying I'm not going to give credit to Montreal. Montreal did a fantastic job in this series, doing its best to shut down Austin Matthews. And let's be honest, they did. I believe he only had one goal in the entire series. 7 games, 1 goal. After scoring 41 and 56, in 7 games, he only got 1 goal. A lot of that credit goes to Montreal shutting him down, playing him hard, playing him physical, getting into his shooting lanes, taking away passes from Marner that would have gone to Matthews. And Price made a few saves on Matthews as well. But you look at how Montreal played versus how Toronto played. Montreal reminds me, there's a saying in hockey. We have a saying in hockey: hard work beats skill if skill doesn't work hard. There is a reason that term exists, because teams who are very limited on talent but have a hard work ethic usually outwork teams that have a ton of talent if the team with a ton of talent is not willing to work hard. Toronto did not work hard in the series after game 4. Games 5, 6, and 7, Toronto did not play to their strengths. They tried to play to Montreal's strengths, and it cost them. The whole reason this series was won by Montreal was great goaltending from Price. Not spectacular, because I think Jack Campbell still finished with a higher save percentage than Carey Price. I will have to double check that stat later. But the biggest reason why Toronto lost is because they tried to play to Montreal's style of hockey, which, if you're the Leafs, you can't afford to do that. Toronto was at its best when they were up in the series. You look at games 2, 3, and 4, when Toronto had a lead, look at how they played. They were freewheeling across the ice. They were getting all of these open odd man rushes simply because Montreal was trying to play desperate hockey to score a goal. Now, look at 5, 6, and 7 when Montreal has a lead. They don't open it up. They don't try to get push for that extra goal, which I think cost them, or nearly cost them, games 5 and 6. But when they got the lead, they shut it down. They trapped at the blue line. They shut it down. They did not allow Toronto the opportunity to get into the zone and have sustained pressure. And I'm not saying Toronto didn't have sustained pressure. A lot of the times they did. But especially in Game 7, look at how many times Toronto is in the neutral zone. They see Montreal bunched up at the blue line, and they just dump it in or shoot it right into the brick wall and then go for a line change. Toronto lost this series because they were not able to adapt their style of play to counter Montreal's. Hockey is like a war. One team has a strategy, the other team has a strategy, and you have to figure out which strategy is best. And if one side doesn't have a winning strategy, then they have to change that strategy to match the opposition. And Toronto didn't do that at all during the series. Even when they won games 2, 3, and 4, they played the same. The only difference was in 2, 3, and 4, they had a lead, and that allowed them to play to their strengths. When they didn't have a lead, they did not change their style of play to try and get a lead. They continued to play the same way, and it was very evident in game 7. The reason I'm not pointing out 5 and 6 a lot more is because 5 and 6, they got back into it. They were down 3-0 in game 5. They lost 4-3 in overtime. So they managed to tie it up. Game 6, they lost, or they were down 2-0. They lost 3-2 in overtime. They managed to get it back. But in this game, game 7, very, very, very obvious that they were not willing to adjust their style of play to try and do something, right? And they had tons of opportunities. And, it's just I don't know what else to say. You can't really fault Jack Campbell. I think I will say this. I think he gave up a bit of a softie in this one, which was the first goal against. But you can't blame him for goal number 2, and you certainly can't blame him for goal number 3 because he wasn't even in the net. Right? Jack Campbell took the starting goaltending position from Frederik Andersen. I think he had a great season. I think Toronto's definitely going to keep him around, and Freddie's definitely gone. But you look at Jack Campbell, you can't blame this on Campbell. He played great, right? The defense, I think, was played as well as it could have been. Rasmus Sandin and Travis Dermott did have a couple of problems in back-to-back games, I might add. Rasmus Sandin had 2 egregious turnovers in Game 5. Travis Dermott had a very egregious turnover in Game 6, which led to the overtime winner. But the defense, I think, played as well as it could have. The forwards, I mean, Austin Matthews had 1 goal in 7 games, right? Marner, I think Marner made some terrible plays. That, I think, the worst I saw was the delay of game in Game 5. You're on the PK, you're in the slot, you have all the time in the world, you have all the space in the world, no one is even remotely close to you, and you just go, whee! You yeet it out of play, and you're just sitting there going, what the heck was that? As a non-Leafs fan, even I'm sitting there going, what was that? You can just fire it beeline straight down the ice. Even if it hits a Montreal Canadian in the neutral zone, guess what? It's out of your blue line, and they can't enter until their players clear out. But instead, you flip it up over the play, and now you give them a 5-on-3, which, by the way, they scored on. Now, sure, it wasn't your penalty they scored on, but they scored on the 5-on-3 that you caused. Right? So Marner, I think, didn't have a great series. Matthews, right? And I'm not saying they played horribly. If anything, Montreal did a very good job of shutting them down. But they need to be better. And I know that's coming from a guy who cheers for a team with McDavid on it, and McDavid didn't have the greatest series versus Winnipeg, but this speaks volumes about depth. Playoffs, your star players are going to get targeted. They're going to be target number 1 for the opposition. You need depth to show up. And I mean, Toronto's depth kind of did. Jason Spezza had a good series. William Nylander, I think, was Toronto's best player in this series. If I was to give the crown to Toronto's best players, it would be William Nylander and Jason Spezza, and that's it. That is all I would say were Toronto's best players. Nylander and Spezza. Thornton, invisible. Wayne Simmons, invisible. Nick Foligno, invisible. John Tavares, he didn't get a fair shot. I think he was injured And I still can't believe that happened. I was absolutely in shock. Zach Hyman gone. He was nowhere to be found. All of these depth players that Toronto had did not show up. And I just, oh man, if I was a Leafs fan, I'd be actually, if I was a Leafs fan, I probably would have no reaction, because that's what a lot of the majority of Leaf fans are doing right now. There's no reaction from them. Most of the ones I've seen are just, well, we expected this. We're scarred beyond compare, so we're just kind of expecting it from now on. But the way I see it, this is a team that had a wonderful opportunity in front of them to make it to the Final Four. They probably had the easiest road they're ever going to have, right? Because next year we're going back to regular hockey, assuming the NHL can figure that out. But from what we're being told, the NHL is going back to the Pacific Division, Central Division, Metropolitan Division, and the Atlantic Division. And if that's the case, Toronto has to contend with Tampa Bay, Florida, Ottawa, Montreal, Boston, and Buffalo. 6 other teams. Yeah, 7. Yeah. I feel like I'm forgetting a team there. Hold on. Tampa Bay and Florida. Okay, that covers those 2. Boston, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, Buffalo. I feel like I'm forgetting a team in there, because it's 32 teams. That's 8 teams per division. I feel like I'm forgetting a team in the Atlantic. Ah, crud. Oh, well, there's going to be another team in there somewhere. I'm just trying to think here. Anyway, the point is Toronto has to contend with all these other teams now that aren't the other Canadian teams. Ottawa's going to be better. Boston's going to be the same. Tampa Bay and Tampa Bay is going to be the same. Florida's going to be the same. That's 4 teams already that Toronto has to contend with. Montreal might be better. We don't know, right? So out of the 8 teams that are going to be in that division, not excluding Toronto, so there's 7 other teams that Toronto's going to have to contend with in the Atlantic Division, and at least 5 of them are going to be on par with or better than Toronto. That is not good if you're a Leafs fan. This is the easiest road the Leafs had to not only the Final Four, but depending on how things go, maybe even the Stanley Cup Final. And they blew it. They absolutely blew it. And next year, it's not getting any easier, because, as I said, at least 5 teams are on par with or better than Toronto. Tampa Bay, definitely better than Toronto. Boston, definitely better than Toronto. Florida, on par. Okay. Montreal, well, right now they're better than Toronto because they beat them. So Montreal is better than Toronto. Ottawa is going to be on par with Toronto, and Ottawa proved this year. Forget the fact that Ottawa was in the Canadian division. Ottawa proved this year that they're not that far off. They have some great young players, and Stützle, Tkachuk, all of these young guys for the team. They're going to be a good team next year. They might be on par with Toronto. So Toronto has 5 teams to contend with for a playoff spot, and you can only get a maximum of 3, or a minimum of 3 in the Atlantic. You might get 1 or 2 with the wild card spot. So you maximum 5. So minimum of 3 playoff spots in the Atlantic Division, maximum of 5, and Toronto has at least 5 different teams to contend with now that are going to be on par with or better than them. All right, that's the way I see it. I hate to be that guy, but that's the way I look at it for Toronto. They had a great opportunity to go through the Cup final. They went all in. They took all their chips and they said, I'm going all in. And it backfired. Because Foligno's gone. He's not resigning. Right? Bogosian's probably gone. He's not resigning. Frederik Andersen's gone. So now Toronto has to go goaltender shopping again, and guarantee Jack Campbell is not going to be able to keep this up. Jack Campbell is good. He's not that good. He is not going to be able to keep this up. There's no way. So now they have to go back for a backup. and Frederik Andersen's going to go to a better team that's going to pay him more, because Toronto's not going to pay him what he's going to ask for. There's no way they're going to pay him what he's asking for. After the season had, no way. Forget about it. Frederik Andersen's gone. He's probably going to go to Edmonton. Right? And if that happens, God help us all. I do not want him on Edmonton. Right? But Toronto has a tough problem ahead of them. And what do they do about one of Marner, Matthews, Nylander, and Tavares? What are they going to do with them? Because the whole thing with Dubas, what was the mantra? We can and we will. When asked, hey, how can you guys afford Austin Matthews at $12+ million? How can you guys afford Mitch Marner at $10 million? Plus a little bit extra. I think he's like 10.8, 10.9. How can you guys afford a team with John Tavares making 11? How can you guys afford a team with all of these guys making a combined $40 million? How can you afford that? Dubas, we can and we will. Well, guess what, Kyle? Your team of 4 players, all making a grand total of $40 million, have lost 4 playoff series in a row. Sorry, 3 out of 4. Because I do not count the play-ins as a playoff series. Those weren't playoffs. That was a series to determine who makes the playoffs. And Toronto didn't win them, so they don't make the playoffs. Marner had a terrible series. No excuse. I don't know what they're going to do with him. Right? Fleet fans all want to trade him now. I looked at Twitter. They all want to trade him. Right? And it's not hard to see why. It's not that he's not talented, but you look at what he did to the Leafs organization when his contract was up for renewal. That does not sit well with fans. Because if you're going to hold out for that much money, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Mitch Marner makes more money than Leon Draisaitl, and Leon Draisaitl has a 50-goal campaign to his name. Leon Draisaitl has an Art Ross and Hart Trophy to his name. He is one of the few players in the last decade to score 50 goals and record 100 points in the same season. I'm sorry, but what Mitch Marner did with the contract holdout, that doesn't sit well with fans, because now what the fans see is, okay, you got your money, now you need to perform. And again, great regular season, not denying it, but come the playoffs, you need your stars to kind of start making earning their money's worth, and he didn't. And I'm not absolving Matthews of any of this either. Matthews was just as bad. The thing with Matthews, though, no, there's no excuse. Matthews was just as bad. The two of them in a 7-game series, 2 players, 7 games, 1 goal. Oh, and by the way, there was a stat in the last 6 or 7 elimination games, because this is technically considered an elimination game. Zeros. Bagels on the board. No goals, no assists. Nothing. I lost viewers because I'm slandering Marner and Matthews. But that's the way it has to be. So Toronto has a lot of questions in this offseason. They spent all of this money on all of these players. Yeah, now I've got 0. They spent all of this money on all these players. They gave up trade assets and futures and draft picks for all of these players. They've got nothing. They went all in and they failed. So now the question is, what does Toronto do? That is my question to Leafs management, and we're going to be seeing what happens. And since I have no viewers, I might as well just end this now. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Oh.